Hello and welcome to Budgeting with US Bank. My name is Corey. I'm going to be your presentation host today. I am a branch manager here in the Seattle area with US Bank. I've been with US Bank for about 9 years, and I am excited to bring you this short budgeting presentation. So what is a budget? So a budget is an estimate, often itemized, of expected income and expenses for a given period of time. So it's where you're able to allocate specific funds for specific expenses, say for maybe a month or a week, and it really helps to put you in control of your money. It's a plan based on financial estimates. So budgeting can be hard. It can be time consuming. It's one of those things that I don't think a lot of us are in the habit of doing, and so it can be really hard to sit down and do that once a month. So we really want to focus on two things, right? We want to take small steps and we want to celebrate those wins, right? If we stick to our budget for a week, celebrate that. If we stick to our budget for a month, celebrate that. Start with a small budget. Maybe it's just a weekly budget. Maybe it's a pay period budget. If you get paid bi-weekly, maybe you're just creating a budget for that pay period. So we've got this great quote here. Budgeting is not just for people who do not have enough money. It is for everyone who wants to ensure that their money is enough. So budgeting is for everyone, and it's a great way to help you feel more calm and in control of your finances, help you feel like you're making the right choices with your money, and that all of your expenses and other things, right, your needs and your wants are also being met. So when you have a handle on your cash flow and your expenses, you know how much you can afford to save, right? You can look thoughtfully at different places within your budget and see if you might be able to save a little more, see if you might be able to be a little more flexible with things to really help you work towards your goals. So for your budget, right, you're going to identify your monthly income. That's first and foremost how much money is coming in. Then we need to determine our monthly expenses. We need to have some savings for a rainy day, and then we need to tally it up at the end and see what we're left with. Those are really the basics of it. We'll get a little further into it here. Some things to avoid and some things to look out for. So common budgeting mistakes. So this is where things can kind of go off the rails a little bit. Things we want to avoid are going to be overgeneralizing. We want to avoid unrealistic targets, and we want to avoid budget creep. So I'll talk about what these are here. So overgeneralizing is basically what happens when we have really, really broad categories in our budget, right? So when we're creating a budget, we're going to look at our monthly income and our monthly expenses. And it's really important that we clearly itemize those monthly expenses. So instead of your category just saying bills, right, we want to make sure we're clearly defining what those bills are. If we just say bills, we're not going to be able to clearly allocate the right amount of money to that category, and we may end up in a situation where we don't have enough to pay those bills. So think about, let's break that down a little further. So we have bills, and then maybe we have within that we have utilities. And then within utilities, we have our water bill, our electricity bill, our garbage bill. And then we can allocate specific amounts to each bill to be much more on point with how much we need to allocate for that overall bills category. So it's really important that you pick categories, one, that are meaningful to you. You know what's going on in your household, so you know how to allocate or how to create those categories. And so it's really important you pick categories that are meaningful to you, that mean something to you and your budget and your money, and that you're very clear and specific with those, and that they're not those big, broad, general categories. Unrealistic targets. So often we create large goals for ourselves, which can lead to feelings of failure if we don't reach them. And to avoid this, we really want to think about ways that we can handle our large goals, that maybe we handled our large goals in the past. Where did we struggle with that? So looking at our past and thinking about, where have I done well and where have I missed the boat with large goals? And then we can learn from that. We can pull from that and say, okay, well, here's what worked well for me and here's what didn't work well for me. When we think of large targets, I think it's important that we break it down into more manageable steps. So if we have a large savings goal, can we break that down into how much we want to save per month, maybe per pay period even, and really get down to the smaller pieces of it? It can make it feel more attainable by doing that. It can make it more attainable, right? Not just feel more attainable, but it can make it more attainable when we have smaller pieces that we're working towards of that much bigger goal. And then budget creep. So budget creep, the key to being successful at savings is to stay disciplined. Start by setting your goals and then figure out which tools will be most helpful to you, like automatic transfers, purchase transfers, and execute consistently over time. Do a periodic budget tune-up, right? Ask yourself, what's new, what's different, what's changed? Have my goals changed? Do I need to save more? Do I need to save less? Budget creep starts to happen if we're not doing those tune-ups with our budget. So unexpected expenses will pop up here or there, but then they start to be more consistent. And if we're not factoring them in, all of a sudden the money we thought we'd have at the end of the month isn't there because we didn't factor in these kind of budget creep items that are coming up. So it's important that we have really specific categories in our budget. We avoid unrealistic targets. If we have a large goal, that we are asking ourselves, is it realistic? Is it something that we can achieve? And then we're breaking it down into more manageable pieces. And that we're doing those regular budget tune-ups to make sure we're avoiding budget creep, those items that can creep up in your budget. So use a budgeting tool. This can be really helpful. It can be simple, as simple as a pen and paper where we sit down. This is how I like to do mine. I get out my calendar, I get out my pen and paper, and I write down, here's paycheck number 1 for the month, here's paycheck number 2 for the month. Here's, all the bills that need to be paid from paycheck 1, from paycheck 2 to make sure they're paid on time. And then that's how I like to do it. I like to do it with pen and paper, but there's lots of tools, right? You can use an Excel spreadsheet. To help make it easier, you can check and see if your own bank offers budgeting tools. I know here at US Bank, we have budgeting resources right on our mobile app, usbank.com. In our financial IQ section, we've got some great info. So I think it's really helpful to use budgeting tools. A lot of times in online and mobile apps now with banks, they offer kind of like analysis on your spending. So they'll kind of do that budget tune-up or that budget creep check for you, which is cool. So you can check and see if your bank offers anything like that. So a lot of times they'll also break down your spending into different categories for you too. So you can kind of look at past trends, right? How much did I spend on utilities in, March, February, January, something like that, to kind of see what your patterns are, because that'll help you see if, kind of help you budget how much you need for that category, and also see if, there's outliers. If there was one month where there was a big difference, why was that? How do I plan for that in the future? So using those tools can be really helpful. Prioritizing. This is important, right? We have certain things that we need and we have certain things that we want. And sometimes it can be hard to separate the two and say, this thing really is a want. It's not really a need, and it's not something that I need to spend money on right now. And think about those big goals, right? Think about those big goals that we broke down into those more manageable pieces when creating our budget. We can't necessarily achieve those if excess money at the end of the month, extra money, is going to unnecessary wants. So things that we need, right? We need shelter, we need food, we need water, we need insurance, those kind of things. We don't necessarily need the latest technology. We probably need a cell phone. It's probably something that we need. It makes life a lot more convenient. That's true, but we don't need the latest technology. We don't need the latest cell phone. We don't need to travel. We don't need to go on shopping sprees or buy unnecessary items. We don't need the latest game systems, things like that. Those are all going to fall into that wants category. And we really want to think closely. Think before we go spending on those things to see, does it really fit into my budget, or is it going to set me back? Is it going to derail the work that I've done in this budget? So in order to put mindful spending into practice, you should start by going over your bank statements. I recommend, just logging into your online or mobile banking and kind of going through your transactions. If you like to print things out and, be able to write on them, that's also an option. But going through and kind of seeing, give yourself a breakdown. Where is your money being spent right now? This will allow you to track your spending, see what you're spending on. Some other tips would be like removing your cards from apps. This was a big one personally for me. Unsubscribing to any subscription services that auto charge your card every month. Turn off like easy buy features if you have apps that you use where it's as simple, you just click a button and it buys it for you because you've set up those permissions. Turn that off. Making it harder to make those unnecessary purchases will deter you from making those unnecessary purchases. So kind of our path right here, our grid tells us that we want to track our spending. We want to disable one-click buying. We want to plan ahead. So think ahead, right? We all know when Christmas comes. We all know when, kids' birthdays are coming up, things like that. Can we plan ahead for those events? Designate guilt-free spending money. right? Having a budget doesn't mean you can't ever spend anything on yourself or spend anything on those wants, but we want to plan for it. We want to designate a small amount of money in our budget every month for those so that when we want to make that purchase, there's money set aside for it and it doesn't derail our budget. Pause before purchasing, right? This is why turning off that easy buy feature or that like one-click buying feature is so important, because we don't think when we use features like that. So turn off or pause before you're going to make your purchases and really think through it. Does it fit my budget? Do I really need it? Find an accountability partner. This can be really helpful. See if you have a friend or a partner or a spouse or somebody that wants to join in this with you, and you can help hold each other accountable. Talk about your struggles, talk about what's going well, celebrate your successes together. It can be a really great tool. And then evaluate what's important to you. What do you want? Why are you creating this budget? Is it more peace of mind? Is it to feel more in control of your money? Is there a savings goal in mind? What do you need and what do you want to feel better about your money? Thank you so much for joining for our budgeting presentation, and I hope this was helpful.